All right, what's up, guys? So, welcome to another episode of the Growth by Shawn podcast. I have Marko Bouley here, and he's a producer, audio engineer. I kind of forget where he works, but we had a long spiel about it. Um, I'm just gonna let Mark introduce himself, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I work at Phoenix Down Recording in Somerville.
That's what it is. Thank
Yeah,
you.
shout out John Scott. He is the owner operator of that place. He's a really amazing dude. He's like just super knowledgeable about all of it, and he's built a really cool place for people like me who are interested in the music scene in Boston to just kind of get their hands on, whether you're an intern or whether you start working there as an audio engineer. That's currently what I'm doing now. I'm working there as an audio engineer, and I'm also a music producer. So I make
All right.
beats. Grew up playing guitar, and I'm just a musical person overall.
So you've just always been into music?
Yeah, basically, as long as I can remember, I've always kind of had like some sort of instrument that I've been learning or playing, and my main instrument is guitar. But
Okay.
as early as like 7 years old, had like one of those little first act acoustic guitars that like guitar players would never. And yeah, since then I've just grown to love guitar and kind of branched out from there to a bunch of different instruments and programs for recording and stuff like that.
Shit, cool. So, I'm super like not knowledgeable about everything music wise. Like I got a little bit about like Hope and how she does it and things like that, but I just love to get things started with what does a producer and audio engineer even do?
Yeah, that's kind of like the big question, really. There's I think really it kind of depends who you talk to, which I think in and of itself is like a really what makes music kind of a beautiful thing is like it's very fluid. Uh that you can have people like Rick Rubin, who is not doesn't even really have much knowledge about how to use like an analog mixing board or whatever, but still has like Grammy nominations with like people like Mac Miller. Or
Okay.
you could have like really knowledgeable, like classically trained, like in music theory musicians who understand like how to build chords and how to write sheet music and things like that. And I kind of like to fall somewhere in between there. I use my music theory. I grew up playing guitar, like I mentioned. I use my music theory to kind of bolster like my set of skills to help people just create the music that they want to make. I work in pretty much whatever genre I can. Country's been newer for me. I actually spent a year in Nashville a few years ago.
Oh, wow.
Got into that scene, so it's kind of opened me up to like the singer songwriter aspect of music too. But pop music, R&B, trap, hip hop. Really, what I do is I act primarily as an audio engineer currently. So someone could come to me and they might have like an instrumental that they want to use, and I will just sit there and track them and help them build out like harmonies or verses, whatever. Make sure everything's tracking correctly. Like I'm not getting a signal that's going to overload and sound distorted before I mix it at all. And that's really more of like the recording aspect of it as an audio engineer. But at the same time, it could be considered producing because I'm just trying to help facilitate like the best product possible,
Okay.
which is a little bit more of a hybrid kind of between audio engineer and like producer. So I can give people lines or suggestions for things, but mostly it's tracking. And after that, I'm mixing down whatever track that they've recorded. So it could be a song. I have people who bring entire albums and we just do like EPs or albums where I track and mix it all. And really my personal favorite, like ideally, if I were to be doing music production and audio engineering together, would be I use both Logic Pro. I'm not sure if you've heard of that software, but Logic
No.
Pro or FL Studio is another popular software that some people have heard of. I probably use either of those softwares to make an instrumental with an artist that I've been working with that is looking for a certain style of beat. And from there, create everything from scratch, either in session or I send them demos of instrumentals that they might want to hop on. And then they write, they do their end, we track it,
Hmm.
I record it and mix it, and then it's a song. So it's
Okay.
really kind of like it can be whatever I think anyone really wants to be, but for my purposes, I love being very hands-on from like top to bottom. Like let's just start with like a chord and make a
Okay.
song.
So there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it really matters like as far as like how involved you want to be as well. Because there are also tracking engineers or mixing engineers that only track an artist in a session and then they send it to a mix engineer. And then the mix engineer might send it to a mastering engineer once they're done. So it's I kind of can wear a lot of different hats, which I'm very
Okay.
fortunate and happy that I'm able to do that. But it can really be as complex or simple as you want it to be, I'd say.
Hmm. So if someone was to come in, and I'm just going to use Hope as an example just because it's like easy for me and we both know her.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
so if she came in and she has a song that she's written and she's got uh the guitar, I don't like sheet music that she's written as well, right? So are you adding things to that? Are you taking things away from it? I'm just trying to like understand you like painted a good picture for me, but I'm just not sure like what you can add and subtract in terms of like if she wanted like a violinist chord in there, is that something that you're just like adding to the music or um not really? Like kind of help me.
Sure, yeah.
Does that make
So I
sense?
guess it definitely depends what what element of like what musical element an artist is looking for. In the case with
Okay.
someone like Hope who's like more country, she
Hmm.
might be looking for like violin like but more like folk kind
Okay.
of sounding that maybe more that realm, and that's not really me. Like I don't know how
Hmm.
to play violin. So in that case maybe we look around for someone to come in as like a
Oh,
session
oh,
musician and I could track that and
okay.
kind of help direct them in the mix as far as like where they could come in the song after Hope's like verse or whatever before the second chorus comes in or something like that. Or if she needed something super simple like piano, I could probably do
Hmm.
piano. You know, if she was like, I need some
Oh,
piano
okay.
chords over the bridge, I could use a MIDI piano where I'm just playing like
Okay.
a keyboard controller and recording it in, sort
Okay.
of thing.
This is where I was not understanding because I thought like when I said like, oh, you can just add in like a violin or a piano, like you would have some type of like pre-recorded on the software, be able to use that in the music, but you need to have like an actual physical person perform that and then be able to add it in.
I think that also is genre specific too. So
Oh,
there
okay,
are
okay.
definitely a lot of things that produce like one big thing that producers do now is if they don't exactly have, because again, like if I wanted to find someone who could play violin for a tune
Hmm.
like that, it
Hmm.
might take time that we just don't have.
Hmm.
So what's become really popular in the industry is like companies like Splice have sound libraries where I could
Okay.
just look up violin samples or whatever
Hmm.
and see if anything comes up there that I might be able to incorporate. So in that case, I could incorporate something like that, like a pre-recorded sound almost,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's royalty free in that sense. So I could use it and just incorporate it into the tune without actually having to go and hire a violinist. But
Hmm.
it definitely depends on genre too. Like I'd be willing to bet that for more of like a singer-songwriter, kind of like live raw aspect, someone like Hope in the genre of country is going to probably want more of like that live feel.
Hmm.
So she probably would ask for if we had knew someone like why don't we bring them in, or like live drums always in country.
Hmm.
I rarely do I meet country people who are writing a tune and want like MIDI drums just because there's something about it that just doesn't hit right for them.
Okay.
So you'll hear things like, and even in different genres like hip hop, I have clients who come through and they'll hear something like the aspect of an instrumental, and they'll say something like that sounds live,
Hmm.
and to them it's like that's cool.
Yeah.
But I also think like in, in internally or whatever, like that the best kind of word for that is like
Hmm.
I'm also thinking that they're sort of thinking it sounds like actually live, even though it's not, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So things like that, there's always kind of like that battle between can I replicate this in a way that it sounds so great that I don't need it to be recorded live,
Hmm.
or am I going to go that route of finding someone who's going to do it for me live that I could just track or mic their instrument?
Okay. So a software like Splice, when someone uses that, like take say you take like a small clip of something from that website, use it in one of Hope's songs. Um, once that's in her song, is that now like her royalty? Can other people still use that track? Is it taken off Splice? Um, or what kind of happens to it? Is it just still free there for everyone? That like small
Yeah,
clip?
yeah, definitely. It would still be free there for everyone.
Okay.
It's more so royalty free is great because I don't have to clear the sample.
Okay.
But at the same time, there's that downside that like now there could be 1,000 other people using that sample.
Mm,
Um, and even like it happens in like bigger scenes in the industry too. Excuse me. It happens in bigger scenes in the industry too. I watch videos like Genius. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the company
mm-mm,
Genius,
no.
but for a long time they were doing these videos called Genius Deconstructed, and they would have producers for like the beats on songs like major records by like Justin Bieber or whatever come through and from top to bottom break down the project file for just the beat that they made for a song. And one interesting video I saw was these two producers that produced something off of Justin Bieber's album Changes, I think. It's got the red cover on it.
Okay.
These guys used a splice sample that they kind of changed a little bit, so you couldn't really tell it was a splice sample right away, but
Hmm.
it was like a major placement with this crazy big artist Justin Bieber that we all know like from this generation, that the basis for the song started with a splice sample.
Huh.
And if I wanted to, and maybe not now after the fact, maybe they did end up going and buying the rights for that sample because it's more of a professional, like higher level industry sort
Yeah,
of
because it's so
track.
popular and
Yeah, but maybe prior to that video, that YouTube video,
hmm,
they might have just left it out on Splice, and I might have been able to find it if I knew what I was looking for, or if I almost
okay.
stumbled upon it.
Huh.
And that's kind of the downside though at times. And I work with some singer songwriters. I work with this one guy down in Nashville, my brother Brett. He goes by Brett.Kukin on Instagram, I think.
Hmm.
But every now and then him and I will work on some stuff on FaceTime or whatever. And sometimes if we're really stumped, we'll just go to Splice.
Okay.
And it's super simple because it's like, oh great, here's an idea, let's just build off this. But at the same time, I've heard people play me songs that I hear the same splice sample that I've used in the past in a different setting somewhere.
Mm,
So it's kind of like the pros and cons. You have to like outweigh those out and decide if that's a route you want to go or not.
okay. So when you're putting music to that, do you think that you've always had like a, I'll call it like a musical touch, like kind of just a knack for like knowing what sounds like good to you? Or was that something that was more learned throughout like your career so far?
I mean, I think it could be a little bit of both.
Hmm.
Um, for me, I definitely was always just a musical person, and like my
Hmm.
parents could tell you the same. I was adopted at the age of 2 from Guatemala.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and super fortunate, like crazy how life goes and like what opportunities bring you. Like
Yep.
just I feel like super blessed to just have had that happen to me very early on in my life because I wouldn't be
Mm,
here otherwise.
yeah.
But just something like that where like neither of my parents play instruments at all.
Hmm.
So it was very much like an innate like skill that I had,
Hmm.
in the sense that it wasn't like I had a dad who taught me how to play guitar or a mom who was a singer and like got me into singing or whatever. I guess I just always kind of had a feel for rhythm and loved
Hmm.
music and like the soul that it embodies and like how like what it brings out of people. But also I went ahead and trained more classically
Hmm.
for the first few years of my life playing guitar. I grew up, I was playing in more live band settings where there's definitely a greater need for like a strong bass in theory to play with other people.
Hmm.
So I grew up playing jazz, jazz fusion, jazz. I was playing like really classic tunes by people like Miles Davis, all the way to jazz fusion, like guitarists like Mike Stern.
Hmm.
And that was sort of something that I think over time helped me create a strong base as well, to the point where even if there was some natural skill there, I was able to sort of use all that knowledge gained over the years to incorporate it into what I'm doing now.
Okay. Wow. So are there a lot of people that so at the place you were, I don't know why I keep forgetting it. It's called
Phoenix
Phoenix
down,
Sun,
Phoenix,
Phoenix
yeah,
Phoenix
Phoenix
Sound,
down,
Phoenix Sound. I don't, I keep on I
down,
keep down
DOWN down.
down.
Yeah.
Okay. I keep wanting to say Phoenix Sun. That's why.
I,
And I
it's
don't
crazy you say that because I think some people have actually said that too before. Like I think I might have heard that before, like people who have heard of the studio, but then like ended up like just being there one day and being like, I always
Okay.
thought this place was called Phoenix Sun or something. Like I feel like you're
Okay.
not the first person to
Huh.
say that.
Okay.
Which is funny, but yeah, no, yeah, it's Phoenix down.
Yeah, Phoenix down. But do you more primarily have with an industry that's like always evolving, always trying to do the next big thing, are there more people coming in, or are you guys more headhunters looking for uh the next big like person? Like how does that work in terms of like how you book people like for studio time and things like that?
Yeah, I definitely think it's still a business at the end of the day, you know.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we definitely have people coming in who are booking through the website
Okay.
or looking for a studio that has a quality product that they've heard of,
Hmm.
and they will text or email or call any one of our engineers. I'm one of like 8 engineers, maybe
Oh
nine
wow.
engineers who work there. Yeah.
Okay.
If I thought of it, so it's me, Casso, Julia, Ali, Ed, Josh, Kyle, Sco, who is Josh 2.0. We have a lot of
Hmm.
Joshes that work there.
Okay.
John, owner
Hmm.
operator, and then we have interns too. So
Oh wow.
there,
Okay.
it's like it's a long roster. I
Yeah.
like it would take me a minute to get through the roster,
Hmm.
but yeah, those were most of the people that over the past couple of years I've known there the most. And
Okay.
like, but we do have interns who are there to learn and things like that. So a lot, it's one of those places where Phoenix definitely brings people in
Hmm.
because of some of the accolades too.
Hmm.
So John, the owner again, John Scott, he's worked with people like Lil Baby,
Okay.
like
Wow.
Snoop Dogg has been there, Jada Kiss has been there,
Wow, that's
Trippie
cool.
Redd has been there. Like
Wow.
a lot of people have come through because they have heard of just this certain level of quality, like
Hmm.
this certain quality standard that we're developing there at Phoenix.
Hmm.
And so there's people like that who do come in. And
Hmm.
because of those accolades, we also have people coming in who are looking to have help possibly becoming the next Snoop Dogg or like
Yeah.
the next Little Baby, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, if this place is crazy enough that people like that have wanted to come in here and record,
Hmm.
then that's a place where I should be if I'm serious about it. So
Hmm. Okay.
it definitely goes hand in hand.
Yeah. Now, how many I'll have two questions here, if that's all right. The first one, so how many audio engineers work like per person? Like, is it just you that works like one on one, and then you've got like nine different studios and each of you are working like one on one with someone, or are you guys more like, oh, three of you guys are gonna attack this and help this person to create their new track?
It can kind of go I'd say so regularly it'll be one engineer in a room with a client, or maybe the
Okay.
client brings through a couple different people.
Hmm.
Um, but we're also like a big family there for sure. It's
Hmm.
very much a positive, like you help me, I help you, we learn from each other kind of place.
Hmm.
So we have had instances where we'll throw someone a session because we can't make it anymore or whatever, and
Okay.
maybe someone only tracks an artist that we work with, and then because say I gave a recording session to someone and all they really
Hmm.
wanted to do was record, maybe my coworker Sco could record someone for me, and
Hmm.
then that client who's typically more regular with me might come back and have me mix it
Hmm.
instead. And like I
Okay.
have faith, like because we all understand it, like the program we use, Pro Tools,
Hmm.
because we all understand and have like a great base of knowledge, we all have faith in each other and trust each other to the point where we could kind of do that, like swap back and forth. So it really is sort of, again, it's, I feel like I'm giving this answer again that's like it's
That's okay. That's okay.
complex,
That's
you know.
okay.
It's
Yeah.
like it can be, definitely can be complex, but
Yeah.
typically you're going to walk into a room, either studio A or studio B, and there will only be one engineer with the client at a time,
Okay.
most likely.
Okay. Well, I think this is part of like why we're doing this too, is that I get to learn a little bit more about like what you do. Um, and perhaps someone listening to this is uh possibly pursuing a um career in producing engineering, and we're setting expectations of what one place possibly looks like, or maybe someone that wants to book studio time, where again, possibly just setting expectations of what something like that may look like. Um, from here, I also want to go into um, what was it? When you guys like have someone start recording, okay, how important is it for you to say, okay, this is a really good product, or how should I word this? Um, let's say someone comes in and their voice is just awful. Okay. Where do you guys go from there? Like, are you guys the ones that have to go and say, hey, this is not good? Or do you still put out a product because this is like a paying customer? Like, I don't understand. Like, I'm just curious how that line is kind of like drawn. Like, what happens there?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, if someone like realistically, if someone's
Hmm.
paying me an hourly rate to
Hmm.
do the best I can, do my job the best I can,
Hmm.
that's what I'm going to do. Like
Okay.
I would never, and I have never truthfully to a client who, even if I thought they might not be the next Lil Baby or
Hmm.
Trippie Redd, I
Yeah.
would never say something like this is not for you.
Oh, okay.
Because
Okay. Okay.
like because also at the end of the day, like I'm there to help people build and grow and
Hmm.
learn and hone their skills the same way I'm doing that every day as well. Like we're all just
Hmm.
trying to kind of get better a little bit at a time.
Hmm.
And me personally, I would never be the type of person to say to anyone that like this is not it. Like
Okay.
even respectfully, but I guess there are definitely times where I've definitely been in bad sessions, and not that the artist is bad, but
Hmm.
it could just be something as simple as like some people are breaking into it and it's only their second or third time in the studio and they might still have trouble hearing themselves in the headphones, like back
Hmm.
in the microphone. I've
Hmm.
definitely had people who come into the studio before and they're in a separate recording room and they say to me, "Can you turn off my input monitoring? Like, can you turn on the what they usually end up saying is, can you make it so I don't hear myself when I record?"
Hmm.
And this is not really in general a good practice because I'm in a completely different room.
Hmm.
And if I mute them, then I can no longer hear what they're saying to me at all. Like
Oh,
I
okay.
just cannot because they're in a completely different room. It's soundproofed. So if they do a take
Hmm.
and all I'm staring at is the audio file being recorded, and then they say something like, let me hear that. If I have their playback muted, I have
Hmm.
no idea when they say like let me hear that or let me
Oh,
retake
okay.
that. So I've definitely had people who are just have to kind of break into like building habits and like growing a strong foundation for being in the booth recording or making a melody that they have in their head come out onto the microphone the right way. And that's really more of like where I how I approach it, at least, is like I would never seek to like make someone feel lesser because they don't understand or because they
Hmm.
might not have a strong base in something. I'm there to be sort of like a positive like vessel for their ideas. And
Okay.
if I can communicate to them what I think they're thinking or what I
Okay.
think they're trying to do, I definitely would rather do that than just be like, we should move on to the next song. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah. I didn't mean it in like a
Oh yeah,
malicious
of course.
way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
I
of
just
course,
more meant
but
like by um things down putting out such like a quality product. I didn't know if the talent had like an impact on the product that you guys put out.
for sure, yeah, and it definitely can. I mean,
Hmm.
they're one of the other engineers who I didn't mention originally because he doesn't
Hmm.
really work there anymore. The
Hmm.
Mackie
Okay.
Prod Mackie on Instagram.
Okay.
Um, he's actually the guy who hired me. He's the person who hired me. I interviewed there one day, and he was there. He was supposed to just be heading out the door, and who was supposed to interview me was Allie. I mentioned her as well.
Hmm.
Allie Duty. I think it might just be Allie Duty on Instagram.
Hmm.
Not completely positive. But anyways, she was supposed to interview me and she didn't end up being there that day. And I was calling her, kind of waiting to see. And Mackie was there. And he's like, I'll do it. And
Hmm.
so he's been super influential for me, just kind of seeing where he is. He's actually recording in New York now.
Oh
He's
wow.
working
Okay.
with Meek Mill. I'm not sure
Oh
if
wow.
you've heard of Meek Mill, but yeah, he's more with that
Yeah.
camp now in New York City, and that definitely like is super cool to see. Kind of like when I first got into there, like where what Mackie alone has done, and that's someone who is still, again, because it's a family. It's great to see people winning in the
Hmm.
same coming from the same place. But he actually did an interview. Or a podcast, I think, podcast
Hmm.
slash interview. I don't know if you're familiar with Do Over Don't.
Hmm.
Yeah, so he did a podcast slash interview there, and
Oh,
he
that's
actually said
cool.
something similar where like it's actually he actually looks forward to the bad sessions, like the
Okay.
sessions that are quote unquote bad,
Mm-hmm.
because it sort of has to activate us as an audio engineer slash producer. And
Mm.
I totally agree with it. And it's why I'm completely ripping it from him right now,
Yeah.
because it's really true. It's like if there is that session where maybe it's a shaky start or whatever, I really realistically, I should be looking forward to those when I notice that that's probably what is going to be the next 2 or 3 hours of my life recording and working there,
Mm-hmm.
because all that really does is force me to check in with myself and my skills and see what I can realistically do, or like how much I can do to help someone take a product that might just be okay in their bedroom recording at
Mm.
home on a USB mic, to like, you're here, you've spent the time and money, let's make sure it's worth it kind of thing. And that
Yeah.
I thought that was a really interesting point, that like you look forward to those because it challenges you, and it's those challenges that are going to make me better as a producer and audio engineer for sure.
Yeah. That kind of just helps me segue into the next question that I had was why, um, like, what are some of the most challenging aspects of someone coming in and the both of you not really being on the same page, but you helping create like their vision that they have? Like, how do you guys kind of maneuver through that and find like a happy medium for both parties?
I definitely think like strong communication is
Okay.
a really big point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely something that is like, I think people sometimes undervalue
Mm-hmm.
in that, like in that sense, because sure, I might be like I could be the most talented audio engineer and producer,
Mm-hmm.
excuse me, in the Boston area or whatever. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not necessarily saying that, but I'm saying like,
Yeah.
say I approached it from that
Mm-hmm.
point, like maybe that's a viewpoint that I had, and I was like, oh, I'm so talented, like it'll just go well, like it'll be
Mm-hmm.
fine. You know what I mean? Like I more like tortoise and the hare kind of deal, where like the hare is like, oh yeah, I'm good, like I don't have to worry. Like it's not always that. It's like sometimes the fact that I'm having a disconnect with someone who maybe it's the first session they've ever had with me or whatever, it
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the communication is the big difference between a good session and a completely bad session, like they would never book with me again. And it's not like
Mm-hmm.
they're arguing with me about anything in the middle of a session, but it could just be that they didn't get their vision out the way they had hoped to with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I strongly feel that like communication is a huge like make or break kind of factor in that sense, because if someone's trying to communicate something with me and I'm not able to communicate back effectively, then we're never going to get it. It'll
Okay.
just, there will always be a disconnect where they are trying to say something and I'm saying this. I could even be saying the same thing, but if I'm saying it in a totally different way and they're neither of us are getting what the other person's saying, then
Mm-hmm.
it won't click kind of thing. So I think for me, I've had to also sort of build like those interpersonal skills and just kind of reading people, even reading people's like tone or mood
Mm.
sometimes. Because if someone's like irritable because the session got off to like a shaky start or whatever, maybe they had a bad day, and it's not even it might not even have to anything to do with me, but they still had booked the time and they want to
Yeah.
make good on it and do something creative. So I have to kind of have those interpersonal skills so that I can sort of read someone and do my best to interpret them and interpret like what they're trying to tell me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with strong communication, it'll always end up better than it would without, of course. But I definitely, yeah, gotta just be communication.
Yeah. Are there times
Knowledge
then?
too.
Okay.
Like, sorry, I don't mean to
No,
interrupt,
no,
but
go ahead.
also
No, no,
the
no.
knowledge is the other thing. So again, going back to kind of like our previous conversation about like
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote like bad session, or someone who might be having trouble like translating their idea from their head to the microphone sort of thing. If someone's not necessarily as knowledgeable like technically
Mm-hmm.
as I might be per se, I always try to make sure that I'm never speaking to anyone in like a condescending way or like a looking down on them type of way. That's a huge thing, because no one ever wants to feel like they're incapable, or
Yeah.
like they're unable to understand something. Just it's like, I feel like it's just a very human thing. We always just don't like feeling like we don't understand something. So
Yeah.
that's another huge factor too. If I sense that someone might not necessarily have as strong a knowledge basis, as strong of a base of knowledge as I do, I have
Mhm.
to also kind of take that into account and communicate in ways that are not going to come across as like judgy or
Mm.
like I'm like teaching you something, you know what I mean? It's because
Yeah.
it's still like kind of like what we're doing now. It has to be like an
I
open dialogue, and it
it's
has to be, yeah. So, and I would hope that you're not
yeah.
getting that impression from
No,
me
no, no.
first.
I was literally just gonna say that's exactly what we're doing here, where I'm not knowledgeable on this topic at all. But when you come and explain everything to me, it's not as if you're talking like down upon me in a sense just because I don't know. But I mean, at the same time, the it is a little different because I am just curious and I'm the one that invited you on here and things like
Sure.
that. So the environment is a little different, but at the same time, like the dialogue is the same. Um,
Yes.
so when you might not be like clicking with someone that you have a session with, are there times that you're ever like, oh, actually, I think that one of the other engineers or producers may be a better fit for them? And do you kind of play around with that?
I've never actually thought of that before,
Okay.
which is interesting. I've definitely had sessions that like it didn't really click for
Hmm.
reasons that I don't really think are necessarily like my fault or that person's fault specifically,
Hmm.
but it just like every now and then it's happened. And like truthfully, like that you just gave me a great idea because if I'm in B room and someone else like Kurt, another one of the engineers who works there,
Hmm.
has been super like is super knowledgeable, has been showing me some stuff recently that I'm just like have a lot of faith in him as like if maybe if I don't get it, like I know he will. He's
Mm.
someone who's super knowledgeable, super talented. Maybe he's in a room doing a session,
Mhm.
and maybe if I'm confused on something, or if I think he might understand what how someone's trying to approach something better than I can,
Okay.
I could even call him in or shoot him a
Mhm.
text or something. Like we definitely do that when it's more technical issues, like
Yeah.
why is the microphone line not getting signal even though everything's plugged in
Mhm.
right? But I've never really considered doing that from like more of like a collaborative sort of standpoint, and that's actually
Yeah.
a really good point. So
Yeah.
I have not done it to date,
Okay.
but now that you mention that, I definitely don't see any reason not to, because if it means bringing someone in for just a couple minutes and
Mhm.
talk like explaining the problem to them and being like, we're stuck on
Mhm.
this, like what do you
Yeah.
think? I
Yeah.
could definitely see that like kind of breaking through like a wall or whatever. And
Mhm.
I mean, maybe if that person vibes with, say I do bring Kurt in and they vibe with Kurt more and they're like, I think I'll just book with him next time, then it is what it is. Maybe it just wasn't meant to be. That it's an opportunity that wasn't meant to continue to come my way, and that's okay. The life works that way sometimes. But it also could be the difference between like they're like, oh yeah, that dude worked through it with us, he's super cool, but like I'm like maybe they are happy to see that I'm willing to be more collaborative in that aspect, and maybe
Mm.
they're like, good on you for doing that, and maybe that actually sort of activates them in a way where they're like, I'm going to keep working with this kid because he seems like he's open to that collaboration, and he is open to communication too, which is like again a huge factor of like that things just click or they don't.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I just kind of thought about it, just thinking about like different personalities and things like that and how we're naturally just drawn to some people, like there could be someone out there that's a really shit person, but I may not click with them, you may not click with them, but someone else for some reason does click with them.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and just in that kind of aspect, it doesn't have to be that situation exactly, but that's kind of why I brought it up, just curious about it. Um, a couple of my uh last questions here. So, how did what is it? Do you need to go to school for something like this, or is this something that was more like self-taught? What's the best route to get started in something like this?
It's a tough question because I've struggled with it myself.
Hmm.
um I'll start by saying that I don't think I'm nearly at a level that I would say is mastery yet, for sure.
I
Despite the
think we
fact
could
that
all say that.
I'm
Well,
working as an
yeah,
audio engineer and producer,
I
like
understand.
I think the word for it is like I think I've heard imposter syndrome before.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'm not, I might be thinking of a completely wrong thing, but it's like kind of like along that line of like faking it till you make it thing. There's
Um,
definitely like Is that kind
It
of like what
it's
you'd
not
think it
exactly
is?
faking it till you make it. It's more I don't like it's I'm doing this like you, like how I would view you
Yes,
is that
yeah.
you are a audio engineer, but how you may view yourself, and like for me on the outside, I may view you on a scale of 1 to 10 as, oh, this guy really knows what he's talking about. He's at an 8, you know, and you're very new in your career and you have a long way to go, but you may view yourself as a 2. I
Yeah,
think
okay,
it just
yeah, for sure.
becomes
Yeah.
the belief about how you view yourself in that aspect, just in terms of the more you know, the less you feel like you know.
Yeah, the less you think you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So sure, definitely I definitely have days where that is just on my mind. And I'm like,
Hmm.
how am I doing this right now? Like, how did I
I
get here?
understand.
Like, of course, but like, definitely there are days that I'm like that. And it's sort of like, all right, I'm just going to do this because I know that
Hmm.
I know I can do it.
Mm.
But that's because my journey was sort of non-linear. Like I guess maybe to others it might be linear,
Hmm.
but I started in the live sound sort of scene, like playing in bands. And 12 years ago, like I probably would have told you that I wanted to be like a rock star and like
Hmm.
a guitarist on stage in a live band for playing like backup guitar for some of the biggest acts today or whatever. And that was like my dream then. And then in high school, I got into more making beats and things like that, and sort of changed that route changed for me. Then I was like, oh, maybe I'm going to be more of an audio engineer and music producer. I went to music school in Nashville for a year.
Hmm.
And so I did not actually graduate from an accredited university in a degree of like music production or anything
Hmm.
like that. But I took tons of theory courses throughout high school, was involved in lots of different band settings, took a year of music school, took some like foundation courses that to this day still really helped me. And I was lucky enough that I just came back and I had made a resume that I think was or obviously was good enough for my boss John. Like
Hmm.
I'm like I DM'd him on Instagram. It was
Oh,
a
okay.
cold DM, like a
Hmm.
super cold DM, like, hey, the
Hmm.
studio looks so cool. I would love any opportunity you could throw my way. Can I send in a resume? And like days later, John was like, sure, send it in. A week later, I went in for an interview, and a week after that, I started interning. And
Oh, wow.
so for me, it was like there was some schooling there,
Yeah.
but it was also because I had just been doing it all of my life and had other instances where I was like playing as a guitarist and had some theory there. I sort of kind of it was like a boiling pot really of like a bunch of different skills and experiences that I think sort of brought me to where I am today. And you could definitely, and other people could definitely take that route where it's like you might not have to go to Berklee College of Music for 4 years and get a
Hmm.
music like education degree or a degree in music production. If you did, there's certainly something to be said for the fact that you worked for 4 years really hard and studied and took all these courses and passed them and learned and created this foundation of knowledge that you'd probably be just as capable as I am in 2 years from now or something. Like maybe they're
Hmm.
already ahead of me in that regard, but like, or
Hmm.
in that sense, but like, I don't really think there's like a, you have to do this or you have to do
Yeah.
that. The thing that I sort of got over freshman year when I transferred schools was sort of, in my opinion, I really think that life is a making like everything that you can of the opportunities that you're given. And
Hmm.
so it's really more of a matter of just being like, I have this opportunity with a social media like app that I can cold DM this like crazy mogul of a music like audio engineer from the Boston area
Hmm.
who I've never spoken to in my life before. Do I want to take that opportunity? And worst case, he says, sorry, we're not looking for interns, or like, you know what I mean? Like it's just a
Hmm.
matter of being like taking that and just seizing the opportunity and going from there, you know?
Hmm.
And that's how I decided to start living life, because I came back and I was in a super transitional period where I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, and I wasn't even sure if music was going to be viable for me at that point, because Boston has its own music scene, sure, but it's not like Nashville, Tennessee, where it's like it's literally called Music City. Like some
Hmm.
people know it as Music City. And so for me, I was sort of it was sort of like it's sort of intimidating to come back and be like, I didn't make good on this thing that I thought I was going to do. But I think really it's about building skill, and you can look up most of the stuff that you need to learn at least at like a not like basic level, and
Mm,
learn and improve, like self improve, and from there just take every opportunity you can and talk to people. Good
mm,
communication, networking is huge, and that's been a big thing that I've had to sort of get better at too. And I just think it's like, again, very complex. It's like there's no easy answer, and I don't think
mm,
there ever will be, because the music industry is one of those industries that is like super fluid. It changes all the time. There's
mm,
big developments every year to year. Like CDs became MP3s, and like MP3s, iTunes became streaming. It's like the same way. There's
mm.
never going to be like a this is how it is, this is how you have to do it, so stick to that, you know.
Yeah. No, I learned quite a bit. And just to kind of wrap up what you had just said, like I've had so many different conversations just this past week, just about we've been talking a lot about like the unknown, in terms of you don't really know how someone's gonna react unless you just go and do it. So like you going in cold DMing John, like maybe you would get a response, maybe you wouldn't. Like you don't know. But a lot of people are just afraid to make that like next step. So outside of just like music producing and career and things like that, I think this is really a great point to leave off on, in terms of it's okay to go and take that small step, even though it feels really big and it feels kind of scary. And what if you get a little embarrassed because you have no idea what is waiting on the other side? Like maybe you could have went and DM'd John, and he said no. Like fuck off. But no, he didn't. Like
Yeah.
he was like, hey, yeah, sure, send in your resume, and like look at where you are now. Or maybe this opportunity could have led you to another one. Like he could have said no, but let me put you in touch with so and so, and gone from there. So you really
Yeah,
don't know
exactly.
unless you just go and like do it. That's it, you know. So Marko, I really appreciate this conversation. How I always leave off podcasts is just like where we can find you. So if people want to work with you or Phoenix Down, things like that, if you want to just let us know.
Sure. Yeah. You can find me pretty much everywhere at Marko Made It. Marko, not CO, Marko made it. Instagram, there's an underscore before and after Marko Made It. And just about every other social media, it's just Marko Made It. Um, and Phoenix Sound Studios, if you think that, like, I don't know, maybe for some reason you're not vibing with my personality after this podcast,
Yeah.
and you're like, maybe I'll try one of the other engineers,
Hmm.
I'd rather you go to Phoenix Down than just say I'm not going to go there at all. Phoenix Down
Hmm.
Studios is PHX Down Studios at Instagram, at PHX Down Studios, and feel free to DM the account, or there might be a number there. And at the very least, there's a link. There should be a link in the bio there to book services and things like that. But yeah, thank you very much.
All right. Sweet. Thank you, Marko. All right. That's all.